Hello and welcome to our first live 1-hour show of 2B1 Family Issues and Solutions, where it's all about family and community, connections, participation, and satisfaction. I'm Mike Hranek, your host. I am a small businessman in the community, and you are welcome to participate with us all throughout the show. This show is for you and with us and by all of us, that together we can solve and resolve some issues and enjoy our community connectedness better and more. Today, our guest is Mike McCarthy in honor of our elections coming up. A week from today, we've got elections. We're hoping to encourage and inform and all to get out and vote, because if you don't care and get involved, somebody else will. All right, Mike. You're no stranger to politics, really. You're a youngster. You're inspiring to me, and I'm sure a lot of other people. How did you get involved? How did you ever first get involved in politics?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. Thanks so much for having me today. And I love having a show that's really dedicated to the community. And your mission here with this new show is great. So how did I get involved in politics? When I was in college at St. Michael's College, I was there on a presidential scholarship. I started learning a little bit about global health issues. I had a great professor who's still there, Trish Siplon, and learned a lot about how healthcare is done in our country and in other countries. Went to Tanzania and did some healthcare advocacy work with NGOs there, and as part of a project while I was at St. Michael's College. And then in the 2004 presidential race, I worked with a group called the Health Global Access Project to try to get presidential candidates to commit to giving funds to AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria programs at the United Nations.
Okay, let me stop you a second. Wow. Yep. Mike, that's a lot of stuff. And this was all pre-2004.
Yeah, this was back way back. Yeah, so this is
college. 2004. Who was running? Was that Bush? It was Bush and Gore?
Nope, this was Bush-Kerry. But in the primaries, most of the people we were talking to were...
Bush-Gore was 2000.
2000, right. So this was the Bush re-elect year. And John Kerry ended up being the nominee. But before John Kerry was the nominee, Howard Dean that was the big Howard Dean year. Remember that? So all of us up here in New England were going to New Hampshire, and we were doing this thing called bird dogging the candidates, where we just kept asking them the same question: are you going to fund the global fund for AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria? And it was great. I got the bug for politics being out on the campaign trail, talking to those guys about global health issues. And when I got back to Vermont in 2008, I started volunteering a little bit. I'd been in California for a couple years after college, and I really was supporting Doug Racine, who was running for governor in 2010 during the primary. And it was just a great experience.
So your first time running for office was what year?
So I ran for the state senate in 2010.
State senate 2010. Wow. So then you ran for legislator after that, and then became a legislator, and now here you are. You let's get back in there.
Yeah, I ran.
Why not? It sounds like you very well. You have an abundance of education experience and in a lot of areas. You're a family man. Why don't we go ahead and cut away to those slides that you brought in for us? Let's see a little bit and get to know Mike a little bit better.
Great, thanks, Mike.
Well, that was a nice. Thanks for putting that together. If anybody in St. Albans area, this is how you'd recognize me. I've always got my hat on when I'm out and about.
I usually see you at the Traveled Cup. That's kind of your hang, right, Mike?
Yeah, I'm at the Travel Cup when I'm in town. But when I'm out on the streets, I always got the hat on, either that one or a black one. Black's the one. But anyway, gracious, you threw out a lot of things during the little initiation there. Hey, let's go ahead and open up the phone lines. Like I said, you can call in any time during our show. This is your show, and it's all about your questions, your concerns, your family work, your relationships. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a minister. But I have a lot of life experience. I've been around the block a few times. I've been AARP for quite some time, qualified. And certainly a lot of work experience and opportunities in a lot of areas. So I can bring lots of experience to the table. As Mike here does at his tender years, he's probably old enough to be his dad.
I'm 34. I probably look a little younger than that to a lot of folks.
You're looking good at 34, And what do you attribute that to? There's usually a recipe.
Just good genes. So, my mom, Pam, is running for the state senate, and people say, so is she your sister? How are you related to Pam? And I'm like, no, that is my mom.
You guys both are pretty young looking, yeah.
Yeah, so
but there's
good genes.
also, that's a part of it. There's no doubt about it. But there's also other factors, and we'll just throw this in there for the conversation. But there's lifestyle factors that keep you healthy and young looking.
Yeah, so one of the things that we've been talking about the whole time I've been involved in politics, and I got in talking about global health issues, but in terms of what we've done locally and in the state of Vermont, in the country, really, we're a really unhealthy country in a lot of ways, right? And we've talked a lot I was part of initially the conversations around Rise Vermont and did some presentations when I was a legislator to try to get some of the early seed money and the coordination with the state. And I'm so glad to see that Rise Vermont, since those early days when it was just a thought, has become this wellness program that we're actually encouraging people in our community to have healthy lifestyles. We're trying to have our healthcare system reward doctors, reward the system, reward the hospitals for keeping people well. Because our old and kind of changing healthcare model has really been a sick care model. If we have a system where we encourage people to have healthy lifestyles, we do more preventative medicine.
Tell me about healthy lifestyles. What does a healthy lifestyle look like to you?
I think that people need to have access to recreational opportunities. Yes. I think we do a great job in our community of making sure that we've got things like the rail trail, that that as we're doing infrastructure changes to the roads, we add bike lanes, that we make sure that the downtown is walkable, where the sidewalks, you could take a jog on them safely and you can walk safely.
My microphone, he says. I lost my microphone. Probably on the floor again. I hope it didn't. I don't know how this happens. I move around too much. So anyway, I get too passionate about things. I was probably, if I had to say my biggest fault, I do get really. Anybody who knows me, they say, Mike, we're busy. We got to go, because I always have something I want to talk about or share or ask a question, and so I think this will be a great outlet for me and the community, and hopefully be valuable and benefit the community. This 1 hour live session, which gives it more opportunities for all of us to participate. So, Mike, back to the health, the health and well-being issue in our communities and in our country is huge from my perspective as well. I was very fortunate to grow up in a family where we had opportunities to participate in swimming, basketball, football, baseball, soccer, and it was huge from a very young age. Swimming pools were very, military bases in our communities. They're prevalent, and I learned life saving. I became an aquatics director later after college or during college. But anyway, long and the short of it is, we need more of that, don't we, in the state?
Yeah, I mean, St. Albans as a community has fabulous recreational opportunities that seem to be growing all of the time. So I've been on the city council for about 1.5 years now, and just as my daughter's kind of getting into being school-aged. And what that's meant is that I've seen, the swimming lessons at the pool. There was a picture in that slideshow of, Stephanie and I, even though I hadn't played soccer in years, we coached some of the littles, the 4, 5, and 6 youth soccer program that when Molly was trying out soccer. There are opportunities for kids like Molly to dance and to do sports, and there are more and more opportunities for kids to participate in the arts. And I love what we're doing with St. Albans Community Arts. So there's just something happening here in this community that I feel like we're offering more opportunities for people to do healthy, creative things. Yeah, thanks for putting that back up there. That's great. And the folks at our recreation department, Kelly Vians and Andrew Gratton, they're just so dedicated to helping people have fun, enjoy our community, enjoy places like Hranek. So we have this new partnership between Hranek and the city that I think is going to open up more opportunities for us to have some facilities there to do even more programming.
Tell me about that. I'm unfamiliar. Tell me in the audience about Hranek. I'm at a loss.
Yeah, so Hranek is the area on the east side of the city, Aldous Hill, and the backside of Aldous Hill, where there's a ski run and a sledding hill. That there are athletic fields and there are trails where you can do cross-country skiing, jog, and walk. And that's been just fantastic for, taking your...
Mountain biking?
Yeah.
Cool.
So there are these winding trails in what we call the Aldous Playground, but for a long time that was all managed by Hranek as an independent nonprofit.
What's that stand for? It must be an acronym.
I do not know where the etymology of that it comes from.
Something recreation.
Yeah.
HA activities recreation, maybe health activities recreation. I'll bet you I got it. Health activities recreation, and what's the C? Anyway.
It dates back, I think, before people were doing a lot of acronyms, Mike. But
what do you think, Mike, about an Olympic-sized training center? What do you think about an Olympic-sized training center in our area or community? As a swimmer in aquatics, I was the aquatics director for a YMCA camp, and I come to this area and I was injured. I had a very, very bad back injury and I couldn't do much of anything, and I was yearning for a place to go swim where I could rehabilitate. I could not. It was challenging. What do you think about that idea?
The city council was invited to meet with an advisory committee that's looking at what's the next generation of our city pool infrastructure going to look like. So the city pool we have right now is an outdoor pool. It's just open during the warm season, which we know is short here. And eventually in the next few years, it's going to be beyond its serviceable life. And so there's a community conversation that I really invite people to weigh in on about could we offer a more modern and perhaps even an indoor facility that would allow for us to have, partnership with the hospital potentially for therapy pools. So a lot of ideas were put on the table. How to fund them and how it might generate revenue to fund itself are all details that are very in the early stages, but there is a community conversation going on that I think is really good about what should the pool amenities be like moving forward. And those are the kinds of things that make our lives a little sweeter here and help us be a little healthier, that are conversations I've loved to have been a part of over the last few years. That's why I get involved. I want the community to be a better, healthier place for everybody.
Yeah, there's one of the fundamental reasons why I'm here is the whole 2B1 family idea. As I initiated and organized the realization. And when I injured my back, you consider, if you're reinventing yourself, but you consider your life. Where have you been? But the thing that really hit home to me is like, gosh, you had a lot of blessings in your life. A lot of other people haven't had those blessings and opportunities, Mike. And I just thought about it. Well, gosh, we lived on military bases, this and that, my education, my teachers, my parents, and my brothers, my sisters. There are just so many factors, as you get older, there are more and more. And the choices. And it comes down to choices and the opportunity to participate. So anyway, I myself, I was talking to some folks out in our area. I said, we need an Olympic site, Olympic training center, sort of place, where we could have a water polo team, a diving team. This is just one idea on the recreation side for me, because I'm having an aquatics background. But my visioning went crazy. We could have a water polo team, we could have a diving team, we could have Olympians training around the area, training for the Olympics. We're not going to have a Susie Phelps. We will not have a Susie Phelps in this area. We don't have training centers, if we don't have places where they can compete and go and travel and do. And I went to high school in Indiana. There was indoor swimming pools all across Indiana, big public school funded places where they competed against the other schools. And so there were these sort of Olympic training centers all over the state. We could have that here.
Yeah, so I think the challenge with any amenity like that, and what we're having in the conversation now, is that there's a real recognition that we do need facilities like the pool in order to have that next level of competition. And even now, the swim teams that we have with the rec program don't really have the facility here locally that they need. And a lot of that sort of traffic and usage is going down to Chittenden County pools, is what we learned from the advisory committee. So there's a need. The question is, for policymakers and people who are on municipal and state government, is to figure out, how do we find sustainable ways to fund those needs, and when we're a small rural state. The population base that we have here in this small community has limited resources, and we have a lot of challenges.
I hear that a lot. I hear that a lot out in my neck of the woods.
Yeah.
Don't raise our taxes.
Right. But there are ways, when we're talking about the pool, where having that kind of amenity can actually help pay for itself. So for instance, if you have hospital programs where people are using the pool therapeutically, and you're getting some of the cost of doing the pool paid back by people's healthcare services that they're utilizing at part of that facility, then and swim teams renting it and people renting it for private parties and things like that, you can help pay for the public infrastructure that way. So it's about having a plan in place before we leap too far down the road that makes economic sense. And I've seen that play out in much bigger things than like a pool right here in St. Albans. So what's happened?
For example.
Yeah. So the project that I've been one of the voices at the table for the last decade, and first as a small business owner, I got involved in municipal politics, serving on a committee about parking, and quickly joined the master plan implementation committee that became the St. Albans Downtown Board. And the downtown board,
you're on the select board here, and
the city council. Yeah, exactly.
The board here. Yeah.
And in my service on the downtown board and the city council, I was one of the people at the table who, helped to advise the city government. We have a city manager style of government where on, what was the revitalization really going to look like? What were the things that we wanted to see as a community, having community listening sessions. And what you've seen is that we've made a huge public investment in the downtown, in our water infrastructure, and doing things like burying the lights, sidewalks.
Got new roads. Boy, what haven't you done in St. Albans here the last couple of years?
And what it's leveraged, and we've used really innovative financing, tax increment financing, so we don't have to raise all this money on the backs of the property taxpayers. To do this, is that the new private investment in office building, the hotel, the expansion at Milan, the wonderful expansion of the St. Albans Co-op Creamery, all of that new value on the grand list gives us new tax increment. And the state has allowed us to use that, instead of sending it up to all of that up to the state for the education financing, for a certain period of time, we can use that to pay back the bonds for the improvements we've made. And that's allowed us to revitalize the downtown when it was really struggling. I got back here in 2008, a lot of empty storefronts, things weren't looking great in St. Albans, but it was clear that this community had real strength, that the historic infrastructure and buildings we have good bones. People were very dedicated to the community, and it was a wonderful time for me as a new little business owner to kind of join the community conversation and be at the table while the revitalization played out. And people like Mayor Liz Gamache.
Let me just stop you there now. You mentioned small business owner?
Yeah.
Tell me about that. When was that? Tell me what did you learn in that process? I'm a small business, so I gotta ask you.
So from 2008 to 2014, I was the co-owner with my mom and my brother Brian and the manager. So I was the one person who was there full time of Cosmic Bakery downtown. So people might remember that I was the guy, serving them lattes and making them bagels and cinnamon rolls and all of that.
Good morning, good day,
Yeah.
have a good day. Thanks for stopping in, all that.
So just that, getting to know people in the downtown was just incredible. I still have people walking up to me going, I really miss your blueberry muffins, that kind of stuff, even though we sold it 4 years ago.
Did you say, come on over anytime? We got them fresh on the table.
Yeah, after this election, I'll get back to baking.
Go.
Yeah.
There we go. Well, that's really interesting. How did you get into baking? Tell us a little about that.
So my
Small
grandparents.
business. Well, how did you get it started? You need money to start a business.
Well, so my grandparents had a bakery when I was young, and my mom and my older brother had worked there, and that was in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, where my mom is originally from.
What's the name of the city?
Rehoboth Beach. So people.
I never heard of it.
It's
spell it.
Rehoboth, Rehoboth. It's on Cape Henlopen, like the little cape that sticks out between the Delaware Bay and
Is that an Indian?
the Atlantic.
Is that an Indian name or something? Anyway,
I don't know where
okay.
it comes from.
But anyway, I said,
you can take a ferry from there to Cape May, New Jersey. There's across the Delaware Bay. But anyway, so it's a vacation spot for people in the kind of Philly,
Delaware.
DC area.
Okay, so anyway, so
Yeah.
you guys, your grandparents down there, they're good in the kitchen.
It was the family business, and mom,
grandparents always are.
As a kid, I learned how to cook and how to bake, and mom taught me how to make pies and how to make cheesecakes, and I was always the guy.
You were an only child. You said you had a sister.
No.
Tell me about it.
I'm the third of 4 kids.
3 or 4.
Yep.
Okay.
So Brian and Laura, my older brother and sister, and my younger brother Chris. Chris and I used to play in bands together when I was in high school.
And a musician
yeah.
too, entrepreneur, musician. You like Renaissance man, politician.
That's kind of the Vermont thing, There aren't the guy who makes you bagels in the morning can be the guitar player.
You should be from Greece, you'd have been one of the first Olympian musicians. That was I guess that was the age of the Renaissance idea. You were rounded. You were an athlete. You were a scholar. You were. We multiple disciplines. We weren't so pigeonholed as we are today, which is another whole topic altogether for families, I think.
Well,
but
yeah.
Let's just take a breath and redirect here. What would you like to focus on when you go? Please, callers, if there's anybody, there's somebody out there, please tell us you're there. It'd be nice to get a shout out from somebody. This is our first show. It's our maiden voyage here on 2B1 Family Issues and Solutions. It's all about, when we're talking about maiden voyage, it's all about the rising tide raises all ships. That's kind of what it's about. As we look after and improve ourselves and our neighbors, we help our neighbors, and we all work together that we can raise the tide.
So that brings to mind this thing that I've heard Congressman Peter Welch say a number of times, which is that there's basically two basic philosophies in government, right? There's you're in it for yourself, or we're all in this together, and there are lots of nuance in those camps. But the general philosophy that I fall into is that we're all in this together. And you talked a little bit about how we've had a lot of blessings in our lives. Yeah. I've had enormous opportunity. I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to where I had very little student debt when I graduated from St. Mike's. So that allowed me to go to California. I made some money. I was able to buy a little bakery and cafe when I moved back home.
Wait. Where you moved to where?
Oh, I was in California after college for about 3
You were in California?
3 years.
Where at? I know California well.
Yeah, I lived in Santa Monica.
Santa Monica,
yeah.
no way. So you know the Santa Monica Pier and all the street musicians?
I was one of the street musicians.
You were?
Yeah. So
I know street musicians out there still.
That's
a
how
great little community.
That's how I paid the rent when I wasn't working as a production assistant.
You learned something new. I met Mike a couple years ago in downtown there, but. Wow. So anyway, so you were in California, come back, you saved some money, we're blessed. And that's the whole idea of 2B1 Family. It's all about, we're all blessed. We're all more blessed than someone else, no matter where you're at. We're not Bill Gates, but we're not the person who is struggling and enduring huge amounts of pain with either bad health or homelessness or some other sad circumstance that a lot of it began in their childhood or in their family or at some point, some accident, some incident. So let's pay it forward. That's sort of the idea. And being involved in politics, it seems to me, is a really, really, when you have that serving sort of idea, like you mentioned, is really, are we, I call it, public servants, what kind of public servants? Are they self-serving or are they really serving public servants? And it does come across that way, and I think that's where a lot of people, they sort of get turned off to politics because of some of those attitudinal sorts of energies that come out of this.
I should tell you about.
Tell me, please. Tell me, because
this conversation comes up. So I've knocked on hundreds over the course of my entire political life, thousands of doors.
It's kind of like, you want politics, you can have it.
Right.
I want nothing to do with it. And it keeps people from voting. It keeps them from running for offices. It keeps them sometimes from just caring.
Sure. So if I knock on a door and somebody says, you know what, I can't stand to watch the news anymore. People are too negative. It's just turning me off. It's awful. I say, you know what's great? I am involved locally. Is that even when we disagree, people tend to be civil, and they tend to really treat each other with respect, and that's 99% of the time, not always.
Would you say it's the Vermont way?
It's the Vermont way. I think it's increasingly under threat because we do live in this more connected society where passions run hot, and the kinds of things that people.
There's big issues on the table right now. I want to touch on those in the next half hour here.
There definitely are, but what I find is when I say I'm committed to having dialogue, and I'm here at your door asking you for your vote and asking you to tell me what your concerns are, because I'm here to represent you. And the philosophy I take down to Montpelier is you vote your conscience first, what your constituents are asking you second, and your party third, right? So I'm a Democrat, and there are huge issues on the table. Being part of a party is about, kind of having a group of people you're roughly aligned with that you can get things done together with. Mm-hmm. But you got to represent your community first. You got to do what you think is right for your constituents and listen to what their values are first. Mm-hmm. And when I hear, people who are struggling to afford health care and people who are struggling to afford housing, the real debate isn't about whether or not there are issues about how affordable those things are. The real debate is, what is the role of government today in addressing those concerns that people have? And that's where we need to be continuing to have a conversation and to keep the lines of communication open between people who disagree on those issues.
Every time you talk, Mike, you talk about a number of really important subjects. We're talking about unity here, Republican against Democrat kind of thing, that discord, and there's some little diabolically opposing attitudes. Attitudes have become a little stronger, I've noticed, here in the last few years.
The debate...
Anyway, you talk about a lot of things, I'd have a whole bunch of follow-up questions, but I want to let you throw it out there. It'd be nice to have you back, here in a few months down the road and see where things are for you. But you're certainly
and hopefully I'm telling you what I'm working on in the legislature.
Yeah. That's what I did ask you. What did it? Well, we're going around here about a lot of issues. So let's see. Like I said, anybody who'd like to join, you're just joining in, this is our maiden voyage with 2B1 Family Issues and Solutions. It'll be an ongoing live hourly show so that you can voice your concerns. You can sound off here in Franklin County. Let us know what's on your mind. What do you like? What are you struggling with? What would you like to see improved upon? Because together we can find the solutions right here. So Mike, issues and solutions relative to the challenges of today. This is a big topic, so I want to open it up. What I have seen and here on the street and in my little coffee cartel, I call it the coffee cartel down at the coffee shop, and we meet and we discuss a lot of things. But what I'm seeing is a big, and I understand, and I'm understanding it, but I want your views on this. These are issues that are the hot issues. These are sort of the controversial little bit issues and the concerns. Recently we passed the legislation for the right of people to smoke marijuana and to use marijuana. Recently there was also, I guess, the other hot issue that I'm aware of, and I'm not aware of all the issues, but these are two that kind of was the other regarding gun control and the number of bullet zippers you could put
magazine
in,
capacity,
magazine capacity. So those were two issues. But that sort of over here and sort of, but direct center is entitlement programs. And this is what I've been hearing, is that there's a lot of angst between the amount of entitlements. They keep growing. They seem to keep growing. And then the governor was elected, Phil Scott said that no new taxes, and he held his ground really, well. But there are certain needs. You don't want people getting hurt in your state, and you don't want them falling through. They want to have a safety net. Yeah. So I'd like to start not with the breathing smoke in that somehow that's supposed to be good, but that we run into fire burning buildings, go breathe smoke, whether it's marijuana or any kind, whether that's a good thing or not. But I'd like to go down this road of how do you feel about the participatory requirements relative to the entitlement programs? Are we looking the other way and allowing a little too much latitude for the people who are receiving benefits to sort of shun away from personal responsibilities?
Interesting. So what I really find is that there's a conversation happening nationally, and it's happening also at the state level, that I want to take a big, wide lens on for just a second, which is that the incomes of people in the bottom quintiles of our economy have been stagnant. And the wealth of our entire society keeps moving higher and higher and higher, and income inequality is one of the biggest threats to our democracy. Income inequality in a time when people, you've got the Republican Governors Association is dropping hundreds of thousands of dollars into little old Vermont. You had asked earlier about what does it take to run a campaign, right? And so let's talk about how campaign finance is changing who wins in our economy. Because right now it's not the average working person. It's not even the professional class person. The people who are winning are huge corporations in our society. And that's just a fundamental fact of this America in the 21st century. And here in Vermont, we don't have a lot of huge high wealth individuals, but what we do have is an economy where there are essentially two Vermonts. And there are people who are wanting to see the highest quality schools. They want the roads to be really well paved. They want to be able to drive back and forth. They want to be able to live in a state that has a high level of government service. And so the services that our government provides, especially when you look at things like education, are absolutely top notch. We have an excellent education system. It comes at a higher cost than in most states, especially when we're rural and it's spread out over a lot of infrastructure. So balancing those is tough. But those are conversations we should be having at the community level, and we should be having so that we make sure that we are taking care of everyone fairly. But the thing that I'm most frustrated about in terms of how we elect the people to make those decisions is that after the Citizens United case, people were able to basically contribute unlimited amounts of money in independent expenditures to promote certain candidates or certain issue ideologies. And it used to be in a House race in Vermont, you'd never see anybody raise and spend more than a few $1,000s. And now in this race alone, I've raised to date, my campaign finance filing that'll come out in a couple of days, somewhere around $8,000, I think will be the final total.
That's what I had heard. I'd heard it was around $8,000 to run for a legislature position. Heard on the street.
Just a few years ago, it wasn't like that.
Another candidate said that, yeah.
You look at both of
Where a run for governor is like $1 million. You figure you need a budget of about $1 million.
Both of the Republicans, even in my race, have taken money from people like Tom and Carol Brewer. Are you familiar with these?
No, I'm not.
So they're a couple, they're originally from another state in New England. They've been backing anti-marriage equality drive. So they were opponents of gay marriage. They are backing a bill that to overturn the transgender, and basically getting rid of gender bathrooms in Massachusetts in a way that's really homophobic and transphobic. The ads that they're producing are just really bigoted. So why are they funding House races locally? Why are they pouring $1,000, $2,000,
what organization is doing this again?
This is Tom and Carol Brewer.
Okay.
And they're a couple that's been for a long time. They have a house in Stowe. They've been funding Vermont Republican candidates.
Oh,
and the concern
high dollar funding.
high dollar. So
it's hard to compete against that. It's kind of like owning the Yankees, where they have versus owning the Milwaukee Brewers, where the disparity of the incomes of the players is like this and this. That's the sort of thing we're looking at.
And so
here?
I've been lucky to have many individual contributions, but then on top of that, to help me in the home stretch, be able to afford things like an ad in the Messenger and all the lawn signs and all of the things that we spend that few.
Do you think there's a better way to elect our public officials?
Yes.
Tell us about that. Gracious. I think everybody'd like to see something a little bit.
Yes. So I'm in favor of eliminating the kind of. So I'm in favor of a system that limits things to smaller dollar individual donations, puts a cap on spending, and where we would really move toward a public finance system where candidates who meet a certain threshold of petition signatures or a certain percentage in a primary system, there are a bunch of ways to do it, but we really should have a publicly financed system so that we know that anybody can run for office. You don't have to be wealthy to run for office.
That would be nice, but that's not the case, certainly at the national level.
No, and even with me, I happen to be fortunate enough that I have an employer. There aren't that many 34-year-olds that run for office because most people.
That's a tragedy, I think.
Yeah, it would hugely damage their careers to do it, and I'm able to do it because I have an employer that's willing to be flexible and allow me to go part-time for a few months and then come back on full-time and keep my benefits while I'm there. And that's they're making a big investment in me, and I think I return that value in spades in the projects that I help bring to fruition. But that's a huge burden on Vermont businesses, and I think
individuals running for office, they can't, it's hard. You can't step away. If you go to legislature, you have to step away from your work.
Yeah, so for 4 days a week, for 17, 18, if there's a veto session, maybe 20, 22 weeks. I mean, that's a lot of time.
And it's not like it's really profitable to be a public representative.
No, I want to make it.
It's not like it's profitable, Whereas where you go to work for a week, the idea is to increase your net worth. Ideally, it's sort of
I think
American capitalistic way.
We have a citizen legislature, and that is a beautiful thing. It really is. But it's very difficult if you're a full-time working person to kind of fit that system that was really based on allowing farmers, especially, to come and serve from January to May from the far corners of Vermont. This comes from our history, right? And it's a system that in modern times is a little difficult to have kind of diverse representation across ages, across professions. So you see a lot of people in the legislature that are retired, and a lot of them are wonderful and brilliant people. But when we talk about issues like childcare and the high cost of childcare that are impacting families like mine,
minimum wage.
Thank God when
drug and alcohol abuse. I mean, all these things that affect families, employment, training, and opportunities.
And so having some people that are really in the trenches, that their peer group is dealing with some of those issues in our legislature.
They're a little disconnected. Is that what you're kind of? There can be. Not that they are, because quite honestly, there's a lot of seniors in convalescent hospitals that were very well connected with thoughtful ideas and good family assisting ways.
So good, smart people from across age groups, across gender and across race, different life experiences coming together in the State House. Yeah. That's what's going to make our state really strong. And I think lifting up the more voices from a variety of backgrounds is really important.
Oh, how would you prioritize? How would you prioritize the issues as you see them today? Going down to Montpelier, where would you put your focus, first, second, third?
Yeah. So the biggest
you put your
the biggest issues are those pocketbook checkbook issues about.
It's the economy.
It's about the economy, right? It's the economy, stupid, as the old saying. But what does that really mean? So there was a Senate debate last night. So I'm in favor of a couple of different things. Phasing in over the course of a few years an increase in the minimum wage.
How would you phase that in? Because everybody wants 15. They want to go straight from $10 an hour to $15 an hour, which would catch us up real quickly, but be burdensome to employers.
So the bill that was passed by the House and vetoed by the governor last year would have gradually stair-stepped up to 15 by 2024. So it was a 6-year phase-in of the $15 an hour minimum wage.
What do you think of that?
I think that's a good compromise. I think
seems kind of long to me. If I'm working somewhere and I'm barely able to get by, waiting for 6 years to get up to 15 when, I need 15 to yesteryear.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different things that are happening in the conversation. And one of the things that opponents of any increase in the minimum wage say is that a lot of small businesses would be really hurt by a rapid increase in the minimum wage. And what we're seeing out of Seattle is that the new studies of their overnight $15 minimum wage increase was that, yes, there were some job losses, but the
what
net
about business failures?
That actually has not been so much the case.
Really? I'm surprised.
And it's in the context of a growing economy, right? And the labor market in general is growing. So opponents last night at the Senate debate, the opponents of the minimum wage who were up there, the two Republican candidates were saying, well, we can't raise the minimum wage. It'll be bad for Vermont small businesses. But most of the people who are being paid minimum wage are working for huge, very profitable corporations. And my philosophical problem with our approach to these issues is we're essentially, as taxpayers, you talked about benefits, the kind of the entitlements. We're essentially allowing the Walmarts of the world to pay people less than a market wage, and then ask us as taxpayers to make sure that they've got food, that they can afford housing, that they can afford a heating bill.
So the taxpayers are paying the difference between their wages and the $15 an hour, maybe, or 20 or something.
So I'd like to see more money in the pockets of the people at the bottom end of the spectrum, because that'll pump right back into our local economies. It'll stay here. It'll help boost our local economy, and it'll be good by and large for small businesses. But I think that
a lot of people would agree with that. There was an economic ideology that they categorized. I don't know if you're familiar with it. You might be a little too young. Reaganomics.
Yeah.
Did you understand? Do you understand that concept?
Yeah. The trickle-down economics.
Yeah.
Also called voodoo economics. Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. This idea.
Yeah. A fee.
But that's that fundamental misunderstanding of economics. I mean, I heard one of the Republican Senate candidates say to my mom last night, because of her support for increasing the minimum wage, you just don't understand the economics. And it's like, well, wait a minute. The economics are that we've got a society where the government's subsidizing large corporations with our social safety net programs so that they can give people a below market wage. So let's raise the floor and at the same time smooth out what we call the benefits cliff. So this is the problem. If we raise the minimum wage too far too fast and we don't address the so-called benefits cliff, what happens is people lose their ability to get affordable health care, for instance, and because
it's a penalty.
It's a penalty for working.
It penalizes you for doing what you want to do and need to do and want to do.
So right now there's a penalty for working, and some of those penalties are those
punish the people who want to improve their lives.
Right. That doesn't make sense, and it's fundamentally wrong, and it's one of the really dangerous things about pitting middle class people who are paying a lot of the taxes against lower income and retired people and people who are struggling. Right now, they're battling it out. And we all have an economic interest in giving people a path out of poverty, the ability to work and have dignity in work, the ability to start businesses and not be so afraid of losing a job that has health care that you can't go out and start that next great business because you got to stay in your 9 to 5 because you need that health insurance if I might still be running a bakery today if I hadn't wanted to have a stable salary and a stable benefits with a bigger company where I wasn't responsible every day for making sure
this is a
benefits
perfect
were
example. I think we should go back and talk about this a little bit because I think first of all, the cornerstone, they say the foundation of our country is what? Small business.
It's small business. The backbone of our economy.
I'm sorry, I said the foundation. Yes, the backbone of the country, but it is the foundation also, is small business. But guess what? The statistics are for small businesses being around after 5 years. Take a while. Do you know, Mike?
I think it's something like 4 in 5 fail or something.
It's like that. It's 80 to 90% within 7 years, and about 80% in about 3
Yeah,
to 5
so 4 and 5. I was right.
Yeah. It's treacherous, and think of the amount of sacrifice, the long hours, the money invested or lost, the profits made and lost. A lot of, so 8 or 9 out of 10 are losing. But the burdens of that and the effects on the families, the children, the relationships, the statistics also say it breaks families up. They divorce over money issues, over the losses of and the children. So it's sad. What's going on with small business is a tragedy. So you got out of the business for I'm sure certain similar reasons.
And it's a combination.
It's so demanding.
We had an opportunity. I had an opportunity to get a great job with a really cool company who I knew the co-founder of.
I'm going to come work for you. I'm tired of being a small business because I get crushed.
So that was part of it. But the other part of it was, I had a baby at home, and
security.
And I wanted to make sure, having a business with 3 or 4 part-time people, 3 or 4 full-time people. A couple of them had health insurance through a spouse or a partner, and to not be able to afford to provide a health insurance plan and to rely on the state plans for those folks and to contribute a little bit toward those. It made me feel like I couldn't, as a really a micro business owner on Main Street, live my values as a business owner. That was one of the reasons why it just wasn't sustainable. If I could have grown it over the course of 15, 20 years to a franchise and had it be big enough to support itself, that would have been one thing. But being a bakery owner on Main Street is a lifestyle more than it is an entrepreneurial business in a lot of ways. And to have this opportunity to go and work for a mission-driven business and to have a better, more stable income and have benefits for my young family.
Camaraderie too. You got a lot of.
It's lonely being a sole, a business owner, the sole manager. Yeah. Even when I had my family supporting me. I was the guy who was in charge and down there on Main Street every day, and I learned an awful lot, and my sympathies and my support, and when I think about people like, so another candidate who's running down in Virgins, his name is Matt Byrong. He owns this great place called 3 Squares. If you're driving through Virgins, stop and eat at Matt's place, 3 Squares, right out there on 22A on Main Street in Virgins. That he works like crazy. And one of the reasons he's running for the legislature is that he wants more small businesses to be able to live out their values. And a big piece of that is we all should have an ability to chip in and make sure that everybody gets covered with basic medical, dental, vision, healthcare services.
Help a small businessman. That would be one less thing to have to worry about.
And the argument against having a big publicly financed universal Medicare for all style system is always about the tax burden. And I say, we're already paying it. I mean, I get something like $20,000 a year just to cover the deductibles, premium and deductible for my family from my business. And imagine if we had a bigger, more efficient pool, everybody was in and everybody paid in a little, how we could reduce the cost of healthcare for small businesses, for schools. And that's the real vision long term. We need at least a regional, if not a national reform in healthcare in order to do that. But with some of the things we were talking about earlier around wellness and prevention, we can start doing the right thing right here in Vermont, and I'll keep working on that.
Well, Mike, we're down to about our last 8 minutes of the show. Gracious. We've spun around on about every topic under the sun here, really. Under the sun. I would just let's just go back and revisit a few of these things. Okay, so priority-wise, what would you say are the top 3 priorities? Top 3, blank, 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 for our legislature next session. What do you think they need to deal with?
Yeah, so I think if we're just talking about specific policy, we're talking about raising the minimum wage, making sure there's a paid family leave system in place, and a sustainable path toward funding the much-needed lake water quality cleanups. And all of that has to do with building a foundation for a stronger economy that works for everyone in Vermont.
Okay, raise the minimum wage, and what was the second one? I'm sorry.
Paid family leave.
Paid family leave. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's not here in this. It's in other states. There, that is.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't aware that was not a
Yeah, and
functioning.
So there was a couple at that.
Sustainable water, sustainable. What was that?
A sustainable funding source for Lake Champlain.
Oh, okay, funding.
So-
funding. Everything's about funding.
I wanted to mention one thing on that
Yeah.
paid family leave. So I was lucky enough to be endorsed by Senator Bernie Sanders. And at the event that I think you attended in St. Albans,
Oh, it was a great event. That was a wonderful.
There was
it's so inspiring.
there was a couple that was visiting one of my friends from Germany, and they wanted to see what an American political event was like. And I said, well, you're not going to see the kind of like Donald Trump, having people chant about building a wall or anything crazy like that. You're going to see people talk about how they care about their communities at this event. And they said, well, what's one of your priorities? And I talked to them about paid family leave. And I said, what we're trying to do with this initial bill is get people the ability to earn income replacement for about 2/3 of their weekly income for 12 weeks in the event that they have a child who's sick or they have a child themselves. And they looked at me like, you guys don't pay for people to have maternity and paternity leave?
Yeah.
Because in Germany, you can take months with your full salary replaced. That's not paid for by your employer. It's paid for out of a payroll tax, and they have an income, they have a pool of money that goes to make sure parents get off to a good start. And we don't have anything remotely like that here.
It's interesting you bring this topic up because I love documentaries, and there's a couple of documentaries that visit these issues. And one of Michael Moore, have you heard of Michael Moore? He's a
Yeah,
producer
of course.
director. He's somewhat controversial, but however, he did produce a documentary.
He's a little hyperbolic.
hyperbolic.
He really gets animated about things.
Yeah, maybe I take after him a little bit, but
Good energy.
but there is a documentary he made that I watched, and I really was very fascinated by what I learned about other countries during this time. It's called Where to Invade Next, and I encourage anybody in our audience to watch. It's on Netflix, if I'm not mistaken. Netflix,
and it's pretty
Where to Invade Next, and it's all about other countries and how they're taking kind of the American way, doing it in their country, and doing it better, and we're not doing it anymore. But it was, boy, they visited France, and they visited how the education incredible went from like the bottom to the top up in Norway, I believe it was. There were just so many things. The paid, they give an extra month's pay. They divide up your monthly salary and put a 13th payment and give it to you in December, so you have money to go travel and do things. Just really. We could certainly learn from our European allies and their justice system. I mean, there's so many things in that documentary that were just really, wow. It's like, we need to wake up, America. Where's you want to make America great again? Look overseas.
Well,
there's a lot of, I've seen, and
I think that we're doing a lot of things really well. And I think our values are still fundamentally strong, even in this age of Trump and people being negative. But they're under threat. And what I come back to in this week, where we've seen a person's very disturbed sending pipe bombs to officials in the Democratic Party and news organizations, where we've seen the massacre of 11 people worshiping in a synagogue. We need to really take a look at ourselves as a country and say, are we living our values? And I think about, have you ever watched The Newsroom? It's an Aaron Sorkin.
Tell me about it.
Okay.
Real quickly.
Right. So,
'cause
so this journalist, who's kind of a conservative guy, is sitting between, a really crazy far right, kind of guy, like, Breitbart kind of nut job, and this kind of this liberal journalist, and they're both arguing. And he basically gets a question from a college student that says, why is America the greatest country in the world? And he says, we're not, but we used to be. And we used to be a country where you took care of your neighbor, and you didn't puff out your chest, and you weren't arrogant, and we cared.
We cared well.
And it wasn't caring to the point of just giving away everything to people.
That's ridiculous caring.
But it was about this thing that, was preached about in my church at St. Paul's last weekend, where every single human being is your family.
To be one family.
Right, and your show is about that. And it's been the week about that for me. And when I think about the idea that, this kind of, it's all about me and it's all about America and America first and individuals first, I'm going to be thinking about everyone in the community, from the babies all the way up until our seniors.
Pay it forward, Mike.
Yeah, and that's the kind of service I want to give.
Mike McCarthy, thanks so much for the show. There are so many more follow-up questions I wish I had time to ask.
I'll be back.
We kind of spun around in circles here today, but we're on our maiden voyage. We're testing out the ship here. But I'm getting my producer legs sort of on the ground here, and Mike, thanks for helping me do that.
Great conversation.
I sure gotta up my game here, but we're gonna do a little music thing. We're gonna talk about, I have a little background on music. I didn't tell you, I traveled with the international group, Up With People. Some people have known about it, but I was blessed to be able to do that. But let's pay it forward, Mike. That's what I'm dedicating rest of my life to, and I'm a little bit ahead of you. But you're already on that track, and keep on encouraging. This is about encouraging everyone to participate, to care more, to care and share more. It doesn't cost anything to care, to share well. And there's a difference between caring about ourselves and sharing what only will benefit us, than caring and really sharing about assisting our neighbor, and as much as we care and share and assist ourselves. And that's what has made America great, and will give America back its greatness. That's how we'll win. It's by that sort of attitude. So I got just a few minutes here to wind down. So thanks again. Good luck. Let's go to the other clip there for please, Paul.
Hi, I'm Mike McCarthy, and I'm asking for your vote on Tuesday, November 6th to return to Montpelier as your state representative for St. Albans. As I have on the City Council and on the Downtown Board, I'll work to bring people together to build an economy that works for everyone in Vermont. We can tackle tough challenges like the opiate crisis and seize opportunities to raise wages and clean up Lake Champlain. I'm proud to have been endorsed by former Mayor Liz Gamache, my fellow City Councilors Chad Spooner and Marie Bissett, U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders, and Congressman Peter Welch. Please vote for me, Mike McCarthy, on Election Day. You can learn more about me and my campaign at www.ilikemikevt.com.
Well, once again, Mike McCarthy running for our state legislature. Good luck, Mike. I hope everything goes well. And to you, our viewing audience, thank you so much for joining us today. This is our first production of 2B1 Family Issues and Solutions. It'll be an ongoing weekly series starting at 12 noon every Tuesday. And you are invited to make this your show, sound off to the community. This is about encouraging participation. Mike sure has done a lot of that. Sure thank him for that. He certainly inspires and encourages me. And let's do more encouraging and inspiring each other to reach for our goals and our dreams, and to pay it forward, to realize that each of us are more blessed than someone, and we always have something to give that doesn't cost anything, and realize that. We got just a little time to care well about what's going on, who's hurting, who's in need, and what do we have that we might be able to make that burden a little less for each other. And that's the Vermont spirit. And that's what what we love about the people of Vermont, is we are that way. We've got bridges to cross and fences to mend, just like any place anywhere else. And we'll do a little bit of that here, ideally, looking at the issues weekly. We want to hear issues from the audience. So you can write in. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, write in. If you'd like to call in as much and share as you want, that's the idea. Tell somebody else about the show, because this is your show. I'm here, Mike's here, we're all here to assist you to whatever it is that you would like to see, whatever it is you like to envision, whatever it is you see your purpose as being in the community and for your family, for your life. I'll achieve a little bit more joy and satisfaction by realizing we are all very, very fortunate. We're all very, very gifted, and utilize our time best possible. So hope to see you next Tuesday, 12 noon, straight up. We'll see what comes next down the road for Mike and for our community and our legislators.
Don't forget to vote.
Oh, my goodness. Yes. Please get out and vote. Your vote matters.